Okay, this video is going to go through one of my favorite systems that people don't even realize is a system in your body. It's called the lymphatic system. It's the bridge between the innate immune system that we've just talked about and the adaptive immune system, which is what we're about to talk about. Here is your point from the study design. So you need to talk about the role of the lymphatic system in the immune response, including the role of secondary lymphoid tissues, in particular, in particular, what are lymph nodes? Okay, just lymph nodes, none of the other secondary lymphoid tissue, but what do lymph nodes do as and what's in them? So this is where we were talking about the dendritic cells living. So let's get into the lymphatic system. So to begin with, I've got some very glamorous pictures of Kim Kardashian, particularly down the bottom. Yeah, these are cankles. You might have had these on long-haul flights before, sitting on a bus for too long. If you've been running or doing a lot of exercise, you end up with this big pool of really fat ankles. Now, if I manage to find a picture, give me 1 second. I'm going to see if I can find one picture for you of how bad my cankles got about a week after I had a cesarean section. Stay tuned for this amazing picture. Okay, are you ready for this? There is the glamour. You can barely see where the bottom of my legs is and where my feet begin. Yeah, so we all get them, but in particular after you've had surgery, this can be a real issue. So why am I talking to you about my fat ankles? Because this means that my lymphatic system was working overdrive. It couldn't work properly. The biggest role of the lymphatic system is to return the fluid back to the heart that is seeped out from your circulatory system. So normally you have capillaries, and your capillaries surround all of your blood vessels, all of your tissues like this. So your capillaries here are the blue and the green, sorry, the red bit in here. Yeah, all these capillaries. Now they are under pressure. So what that means is that liquid seeps out of these and into the tissue surrounding. Now, if that fluid just constantly seeps out and out and out and out and out and never gets drained back in, that's when you end up with cankles, you end up with bigger problems. Now you don't have any blood volume. So the biggest role of the lymphatic system is to take that liquid and put it back into your blood. But the problem with that is it's kind of like a drainage system. So it absorbs and transports fats as well, but that's not really what we're talking about. What we're more concerned about is this function and this function and this function. As it's draining everything back, you don't want things to travel along for the ride. So if you've got a pathogen in your body and it's hanging around in your tissues because of the inflammatory response, it'll get dragged into your lymphatic system. So your lymphatic system has a really important role. Its role is to, so here you can see all of these lymph vessels all over your body. Its role is to drain all of that fluid back past these tissues. Yeah, so you can see here we've got things like your spleen, we've got things like your thymus, and we've got lots and lots and lots dotted all the way around the system. There are heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps of lymph nodes. Yeah, and they are checkpoints. There is a good crash course. I'm going to link the crash course in our playlist so you can watch that as well. But the structure of it is that it's these vessels. I like this picture a lot because it shows you what's happening. And here's a zoomed in picture of the vessel. So the vessel isn't like the bloodstream where it's constantly connected in a circuit. It has little kind of finger-like projections. So the fluid kind of seeps in via these one-way valves into this lymphatic system. It drains up, 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 all the way back to your heart. Now, on the way, it passes these lymph nodes, okay? All these valves and lymph nodes. So they are checkpoints the whole way through this system. Now, the thing is, it is moved by other muscles when you move or breathe. So if you sit still for a really long period of time, so in a bus or on a plane, and you don't move, then you end up kind of, your lymphatic system can't work as well, so you end up with that build-up of fluid down low where gravity is playing its part. So that's why you must get up and walk around the plane. Thanks, Mum. All right. There are two primary lymphoid organs that I like to mention, but are not examinable by their name. Not examinable by name. So the first one is your bone marrow. So your bone marrow is actually the place where your lymphocytes are born. So this is, you have a lot of stem cells in your bone marrow, and they divide and differentiate and become different types of white blood cells. So it's pretty cool. And then the other part of your primary lymphoid system is the thymus. So the thymus is kind of, you can see the thymus here. It's right near your heart, just above your heart. And that's where a lot of your white blood cells mature. So they get made in your bone marrow, and they travel all the way up to your thymus, and that's where they mature. After they've matured, they start to occupy these secondary lymphoid organs. So here's the very important one we need to know is lymph nodes. The other ones that you might have heard of these organs and go, I've never known what my spleen does before. This is what your spleen does. Your spleen is a site for your white blood cells to hang out and help protect your body. So we are on page 12 now. So having a look on page 12, you will see that the spleen, it tells us that it controls the number of red blood cells. It gets rid of old red blood cells. You don't need to remember these. So these ones here are not on study design, but they are pretty interesting. I'll let you have a read about what they all do. So things like adenoids, you might have had your adenoids removed. They're the ones that are up here. Yeah, your sinuses. You might have had your tonsils removed. They're big secondary lymphoid organs. You might have had your appendix removed. So without these, you can pretty much function. The last one of these Peyer's patches, they're on your small intestine. So they're essentially checkpoints. Why would you need it on your small intestine? Yeah, that's a really good question to think about. If a pathogen makes it all the way through there, you need something to be like a little source of white blood cells ready to attack that pathogen that's in the right place. But essentially, all of these things act as filters. Yeah, so you can see here are your lymphatic capillaries. The lymph travels up, 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 and through these lymph nodes. The lymph nodes are little swollen patches. When you are sick, these get inflamed. So you might have had a doctor feel around your neck here when you are sick, and you might be able to feel around here when you're sick. Now, I'm hoping no one is at the moment. But that means that your lymph nodes are swollen, which means they're working overdrive. So they act as a filter. That's the biggest things. They act as a filter. They trap foreign particles, and they trap pathogens. This is where most of your dendritic cells hang out. That is because they are waiting. All of a sudden, a pathogen comes in, and they're like, oh, yum, and they eat them via phagocytosis. They also tend to do this antigen-presenting thing on the outside. So they'll eat the pathogen, pull off part of its coat and shove it on the outside as a trophy. Now that trophy is really important when it comes to our final part of the immune system. So that's what makes them antigen-presenting cells. So it's our cells, like I said with the MHC2, they're cells presenting these antigens on their surface. I want you to pause and I want you to try and draw a cartoon of the lymph nodes. I'll link to this PowerPoint so that you can go back and have a look at them. But you need to have your basic kind of function of a lymph node here. So it's a one-way flow. So the flow comes in here. You've got lots of little sections. Oh, that shouldn't be like that. And in here you might have dendritic cells. When I say cartoon, I just mean picture. Dendritic cells, you're going to have macrophages. Yeah, and they're all going to engulf an antigen-presenting cell. So the lymph comes in from the bottom. Lymph enters. This will be much nicer on your picture. And the lymph exits up here. And hopefully, in the process, it's had some of the pathogens that have been traveling in it kind of filtered out and gotten rid of. So your lymph nodes, this is what I'm talking about here. You can see this swollen lymph node in this person's neck. That's because if you've got an infection, your lymph nodes are going to swell, produce heaps of more red blood cells, or sorry, white blood cells, and just have them in there waiting. And so that is all I'm going to say about the lymphatic system, but it's pretty cool. And if you want to know more, hopefully we'll be back at school soon and I'll be able to tell you more during lesson.